The fog. So, I don't know how common this is, but I thought I would ask here. My wife had various things going on with different men, culminating in an emotional affair which ended 3 years ago. None of these various situations was ever physical as far as I know. I have been able to verify that to some extent but not entirely. So, I found out about all of it at once. I found out about the emotional affair from her coworkers, and then the rest came out during the weeks of arguing that followed. So, most of the past 3 years has been us arguing over what went on and how responsible she is. So, we've managed to stay together. I got counseling and I eventually stopped trying to fix things and said it was all on her to fix. So, to my surprise, she has done really well and has pretty much done everything I expected. The one thing she can't seem to do is explain the whys and hows I have about all of it. So, problem one is that I remain just in limbo in terms of trying to get it. She has given different explanations for what happened and they actually add up when looked at in total. But she has also been totally honest, and some of what I've found out has been disturbing to me. Her honesty, I guess, is double-edged. Another problem is that she still does not seem to get boundaries. I know for sure she is not trying to do anything with other men, but she still allows one in particular to violate boundaries, and she seems almost afraid to put a stop to it for stupid social reasons. This seems to be what led to issues before, though she says she is not who she was then. So, she is doing what I think needs to be done, but there remains a huge flaw, I guess, in how she handles things. I think she is still seeing me also as the guy who has to fix everything instead of fully owning it all herself, though she is now totally honest and has allowed me to check up on anything I want to be sure. So, to sum up, it's been a years-long series of inappropriate situations with her and other men. The emotional affair and the other situations never became physical, but I am not sure of that, just going by what she and the counselor say. And she still sees me as this guy who needs to man up and handle anything, including all of this stuff. At the same time, she consistently says she doesn't worry about me doing the same, though she expresses a lot of jealousy when women approach me. So once all this has happened, is it always an ongoing problem? Is what she did always going to be in the back of my mind as long as we're together? What else needs to happen to fix things? Thank you for your time. In the past, I would put up with a lot of this and try to fix it all, if that makes sense. So, she had these guys in these situations, and I would think that I had really screwed up and beg her to tell me what to do. After a while, I figured out that that would be no good. I told her if anything like this goes on again, we're done and she can start over on her own, something which terrified her, I admit. So that's when her change came about and she became pretty much a great wife. Except for that one big thing I mentioned, which is that her boundaries remain not great. She tries to nice her way out of these guys hitting on her, when really, I want it to be like you say, approaching her that way would be a mistake. Her motto for a long time was the whole office spouse thing, and of course these guys would inevitably try to turn it physical. One may have succeeded, but I don't know. The others were supervisors who didn't have pretense of being friendly but pretty much just demanded dirty favors. They did less well, though only by sheer good luck for me. It's stuff like that that makes getting over this still difficult 3 years on and after counseling, but I guess it could have been much worse given what she's told me. I found out she was having, what I later was told was, an emotional affair when her coworkers told me. They ended up helping me a lot by telling me, but they didn't do it to be nice but to humiliate me. One woman had a husband who wasn't doing well in business, but I was. She said to me, if I'm so great, then why does my wife have a boyfriend? Then she and others elaborated on what they'd seen. So that led to the first confrontation, which eventually led to me learning about the rest. But my wife first emotionally abused me for a while, trying to end the marriage. As to what she told me, she's tried to give explanations to me about why she did what she did. Overall, they make sense but remain really disturbing to me. Mostly finding out what she did, but more so what she would have done. For example, a supervisor said he wanted her to do certain things for him. She agreed and would have had he not been transferred so soon after, plus his religion kept him from acting right away, though he could have. Things like that stick with me. But by telling me that she knows there's no going back, she's been found out. So it's also been a good thing in a way, I realize now. Explaining the other guy who is currently harassing her, there is a man in her social circle who has pursued her for bonding. Not a friend of hers, but and so of her friend. So, she has shot him down but has not made him go away, which is because she's trying to keep everyone friends. But still, he's around, saying really blatant things and in one case directly trying to get her to do something. This has caused us more fights than anything recently, which is why I came here. I can't make her understand. So basically, she hangs with her friend. They drink and smoke together, swim together, sun, fun, BBQ, parties, and all that. We're in a warm state. That stuff ended like 2 weeks ago and will return in March or so. But her friend's husband will come around when she's there or when they're out together, usually drunk and high, he is, and will say things. He will say things to me about her. Once he made a move. She reacts appropriately by shutting him down, unlike what came before. I don't blame her for him, but I do blame her for being around him, and especially for subjecting me to it. He's a burnout while I'm very high achieving despite the depression I suffered during this past 3 years. So, throwing down with him would cost me quite a bit. I don't want to get into the details of that. So, I have blown up at her pretty good. I want him gone. She does not want to give up her friends or her social life. She feels as long as she shuts him down each time, then so what, which I admit she does. I feel like given she came close to going to bed with just about anyone who asked for several years, she doesn't even get that much leeway. I tried to describe some of what went on with her supervisors. Usually, it was a boss saying something dirty, like some men will. But she wouldn't push back or shut it down, so it would continue and get worse. This happened with multiple different men. In one case, her boss's boss came to the site and said something physical to her. I don't know what I'm allowed to say here, but then it escalated from there. He eventually made clear that when they went for conferences, he wanted to sleep with her, made a lot of demands, which she admits now she agreed to. He told her what he wanted, how it would go, he wanted things his way, he wanted to see a receipt for her BC so she wouldn't get pregnant. She told me all this and repeated to our counselor when I asked her to. So, he told her later on that he was LDS. He couldn't do that with her without betraying his family, which she also told me about in counseling. He couldn't go through with it, he was anointed or something that I didn't understand. So, he came back a few days later, said he would want her to do some things with him but not others. She agreed but was upset with him in some way I don't get. Then he was transferred to another region, which was effectively him being let go, so he moved and then quit not too long after. That's an example of what I mean. So, the obvious issues are that she's been honest about it, but also that she agreed to do what he and others wanted. There was a guy who wanted her to come to his poker nights for him, so on and so forth. But in each situation, it was either the guy leaving or us leaving that kept it from happening. I was able to verify all of these situations but one. This was by what had been written, emailed, texted. The ones I can't verify are the emotional affair guy who I still think she may have slept with, plus bosses she had so far back that I have no records to check. I have told her I believe she slept with her affair partner. She still denies she did and I'm inclined to believe her, but at the same time I doubt it. But I told her I thought that and she has said that she wishes sometimes she had, since I treat her like that kind of woman, and she wishes she got the pleasure of doing it. So that set me off, but I didn't bring it up in counseling. By that time, I was seeing the counselor on my own and more for depression than for her infidelity, though we talked a lot about both. Sometimes I think she did something with him but not all he wanted or something. She seems to rely on those distinctions sometimes. But I can't prove it because she was right next door to him at work, so never texted or emailed except for large, attached files. But I looked high and low to try and find out. I'm not trying to be standoffish, I just don't know what I can write here. But anyone can ask me, I don't care. Understand that I consider what she did 100% bad, as if she had slept around. And if I ever find out she has done even halfway to having a work guy again, I'll leave. I told her this and told her at my age I can start over, but she will have a heck of time finding a guy like me. She says she knows. I don't suspect she likes the attention and advances. She said she does. But she says she can end them then and there as they arise. Which she has for the past several years, including when I saw, but she didn't know I saw. But yes, she likes it and she likes certain types of men. I don't write that out easily. It's some of those details I learned from her, from our counseling, and relayed to me by our old counselor. I don't understand her friend. I don't get her reactions at all. Not sure what to do about that. It's a weird group to begin with. It's hard to explain what they are, but they aren't my kind of people, which my wife resents. No kids, we both in 30s. I love her and she isn't how she was before. She has changed a lot. She is honest and goes out of her way to do what I need. I don't know if she's changed fundamentally or not. I think this could still happen. That's been part of her honesty, is admitting this is always a risk. Not that she wants it, but that this stuff happens when people get too close that way. She shuts him down, just not permanently. So, what I mean is, she waits till he does something, then just denies him. Walks away then. But she doesn't complain to her friend, or cut herself off from them entirely. This is what bothers me. So, she'll go back the next time, smoke with them again, maybe drink, then sun herself or go in the pool. Then if he says something, she shuts it down. The time he made a move on her, she pushed him off of her and moved away. But there's always the next time. So, I'm not doubting her ability or intention to shut him down. It's my worry that there is always another chance for him. Because he'll be there or wherever they go to hang out. She wants to end the situation each time it comes up. I want her to end it for good. 1. She is no longer at that job. So, these particular men are not an issue. The bosses who hit on her did so far apart during the course of 10 years. The one man she was involved with was her emotional affair partner, who she was with when she left that job and we left the area. I was able to verify most of the more recent men as having not done anything physical with her. The ones I can't verify go back too far for me to verify, like no records, and in one case far enough back she wasn't even texting yet. I don't know why she agreed to do what she did for her one boss, really her boss's boss. I don't understand that. I have asked her many times, on my own and in counseling. She doesn't know, says she was in a phase, thought he was attractive, changed her mind as soon as he talked about his faith and family. It's not a good answer but the one I have. She did none of this for any promotion or anything like that. When I asked her about that, she was disgusted by the idea. I know it makes no sense, but when I ask if she would have done this for personal gain, she says no way. When I ask why then, she says it would have been for the experience of doing it. Then she asks forgiveness again, as always, and tells me it will never happen again. Well, I'm embarrassed that I haven't done anything when it comes to the current guy. I want to say I have had the right idea about what to do, but most of it has not been what I'm used to at all. I'm not used to even the idea of walking up to a married woman and saying these things to her. I was also deeply in depression, for which I got professional help when I first learned that this was going on. I only recently stopped going to weekly counseling for both her infidelity and for depression, anxiety. I haven't been myself for a long time, though I would probably never handle any of it by simply attacking him for several reasons. I mean, ask me whatever you want that's unclear. I'm doing my best to explain and to understand why my life is where it is now. But I only recently woke up from a 3-year depression and I don't really have a clear view of things. Last time we were around the current guy who's after her, she thought she saw me get mad at something he said. I didn't and hadn't been paying attention. But she was really into the idea that I'd gotten upset and reacted. So, I'm sure she needs some kind of jealous reaction from me in addition to the attention she seems to need from all these guys. But I still think there is a huge difference from how she is now versus how she was when this was really going on and she had her affair. The way she's risked our marriage just to keep me reacting seems to bear that out. This is very different from the past where she hid so much from me, but is also very hard to deal with. I hate hearing all this from her but need to at the same time. But I think it's the combination of male attention, now, and my reactions. When I get jealous of anything else or react at all, she just gets annoyed. But I'm not sure how to get her to respect boundaries when we've fought over this 100 times in 3 years and she still slides right back to doing this, letting some things get said and hoping I hear or whatever her mo is now. I can get why my reactions are so important to her now. During my depression, I pretty much sat in a room and zoned out for a long time. She hated my passivity, so now I think she seeks out things that get me to react strongly. But I let this go on a long time simply because I was too depressed to react before. It really took a lot out of both of us. I am not really part of her circle. I'm not liked within that group. Early on, when she was still in the mode of going all scorched earth and trying to destroy me emotionally, she told all of her friends what a piece of trash I am, and how I led her to do this and that, how I overreact to nothing. She of course wasn't telling them the truth. Since then, she's tried to make it up to me, tried to build me up to them. But first impressions stick. So, I'm not really liked at all by them. I'm the stick in the mud that thinks men hanging around making apes of themselves and doing stupid things to entertain the group, while drunk, stoned, half-naked women lay by the pool and cheer them on as lame after 22 or so. They mostly disagree. I don't get this group though, why how this man acts are considered just fine to them. I mean, they don't say anything or react at all. And it's not like he's nice to everyone. He's pretty much a d-bag to all of them, but no one says a thing. She goes out alone most of the time when it comes to them. They're her friends. I stay in or do my own thing. About once a month she wants me to attend a more couples-oriented event with them, and that's when we end up fighting a ton because he says or does something, or challenges me in a nicely nice way. And she ends up liking the whole situation, but not liking me trying to do anything. I guess I'm supposed to stew silently, which she likes. She likes my nostrils flaring, she says. I don't really get it, but while I was so depressed it was the least of my problems. Now that I'm back on my feet again for the first time in years, I'm starting to react to all of this in a more typical way, I guess. I don't know why she puts so much priority on these people. They don't treat her that well. I mean, they're nice enough to her, but she's usually second fiddle even to her best friend when others are around. We haven't been able to have kids, working on that. It's not a choice, and I'm sure a lot of my issues have made it more difficult. We have a lot of bonding, and that's never been a problem even when she was in her emotional affair. I have an average to high drive and hers is high. In terms of my depression, I don't need counseling anymore. Never did the drugs because it would have been a permanent thing, both doc and counselor said. I take Ativan now and then for anxiety, but generally I do without drugs. The main thing now is to repair my career. I was successful before and that success remains, but really my career has just been on a plateau for 3 years back. During my depression I just never had the energy to do anything extra beyond what was necessary. I didn't lose anything career-wise but didn't move ahead like I always had. I'm also now trying to understand all of this. It's been 3 years since things got bad, but it also feels like it was just yesterday. Time didn't seem real for most of that stretch, and I've been sitting in a disused room for most of my free time. I don't want to tell her to obey boundaries. She would do it if I asked, but I don't want to have to ask. I want her to understand what should be pretty common sense from my point of view. If you've recently had a series of affair-like relationships crowned by an actual affair, you shouldn't spend days smoking up with guys who have recently grabbed your bee, especially when your husbands are bothered by it, which he shouldn't have to say yet again. It would also make me the bad guy again. She would say fine, stop hanging with them, and then would blame me for all of it. It doesn't really gain me anything then. She knows it bothers me, she knows it crosses boundaries. If I make some big demanding move now I might win in the short term, but long term I'm right back to where I've been our entire marriage. Having to play daddy to her all the time and enforce rules which she then challenges and finds a way to do what she wants. What I want is for her to not want that stuff at all, and I can divorce her if things don't change, which I've made clear to her. Even when this happens, then she spends the day weeping and I get to be the bad guy again. My comments: would you divorce your partner over emotional affair? Or you think there was something more than an emotional connection? Story 2. I never ever expected to think my husband would cheat. One of the personality traits that attracted me to him was his loyalty, actually. This is the man who, while in the Philippines on an exercise, called me sobbing because a friend had bought him a lap dance but he didn't want it and he considered it cheating. I met my husband 2 years ago at a volunteer event while he was still in the military. He initially pursued me. He said I love you first. He proposed to me after 8 months. He wanted to get married quickly. I went along with it because, well, I loved him. He's funny, generous, caring, loyal, good-looking, and was devoted to me. The next part's the part where I come clean. I'm not a good wife. I haven't been a good wife. I take out my frustrations on him more often than not, even when he doesn't deserve it. I don't want bonding as often. I have low desire. I can tend towards being controlling and jealous. I didn't work as hard on those problems early in our dating, marriage as I should have. I'm trying now, and I thought he was being really patient with me, telling me when I'm being unreasonable and helping me communicate more healthily. So, we got married. The first year wasn't easy. We went to counseling for the first time after about 9 months of marriage. Then his drinking started going out of control and I'm the one that turned him into substance abuse. The drinking's much better now, closer to normal than 2 bottles of wine, equivalent every Saturday. But he was, and I think still is, very mad that I betrayed him like that. I got pregnant last March and miscarried in June. A week after the miscarriage, I came back to the States and he stayed in Japan until October. This was a very dark time for me. I'm sure it was for him, but he refuses to talk about it other than to say that he was sad too. In October, we finally reunited, and he began the process for getting out of the military. I had wanted him to stay in. I knew we were accustomed to a certain level of income and I didn't want to add financial problems to our possible list of things to fight over. I begged him to at least do another 2 years, so he could get his associates and get out with a degree. He promised me he had figured out his life's calling was to be a nurse and he would go to school for that. It's worth noting, I think, that he was willing to stay in when I was pregnant. He's not in school for his nursing degree. He decided instead on social work, and even that doesn't seem concrete. He keeps saying he just wants to get his general classes out of the way. I keep trying to point out that his GI Bill is only for a limited amount of time, and if he's not 100% on what he wants to study during that time, he could end up running out before he gets a degree, but it doesn't seem to be helping. I also started noticing a change in behavior. He became lazy, uninspired, a couch potato. His number one concern when we found an apartment, and later were moved into government housing, was getting an internet connection to play video games. He became entitled. The car I had gotten was too difficult for him to drive. It's an SUV and we only have one vehicle, and he was too used to driving in Japan, so I had to drive everywhere. He started having 1 or 2 beers right before I got home from work so that if we had to go out, he could tell me I've been drinking. I can't drive. Grocery shopping stressed him out too much. I had to do it alone. While he had done some of these things in Japan to a lesser scale, it was so much worse now. I felt like his mother, or his chauffeur, not his wife. But, I figured, he just got out of the military, an institution he's been entrenched in for 4 years. A little identity crisis is to be expected. He started school and I thought that going to school would help snap him back to the man he used to be. It didn't. We scheduled all his classes to fall on 2 days of the week. With the most basic of beginning courses, he was struggling. I would come home from work to him doing homework and ignoring household chores every single day. I mentioned this in my other thread for more details. I understand spending whole days on homework sometimes. I really do, but every single day. It was around this time I found out he was still talking to an ex-girlfriend. She's married, has 2 children, and lives in Texas. We are now in California. I was absolutely gutted. I know from talking with him previously that he'd dated her in high school. She'd cheated and gotten pregnant, and he had either seriously considered proposing or actually proposed to her. She constantly was saying inappropriate things or moaning about how they couldn't say inappropriate things because they were both married. I asked him to please cut off contact with her, as it really bothered me, and he had promised me he did. At this point, I got really upset, and I called him on it. I had found texts, and they said that she had actually come and visit with him at least once when he went home to see his family in November. He swore that it was only for 5 minutes and it was in front of my mom. After some thought, I decided this would not be the battle I chose to hold my ground on. I would give him some rope and some freedom and see if he hung himself from it. I'm pretty sure they're still communicating. Last I heard in February her husband had been caught cheating on her with a neighbor's wife. My husband was the first one she told. Our fighting got worse. He did really badly in school and money was still very tight. At one point I was positive we were over and I had paperwork filled out and told him to get out. go to Texas, and stay there until he felt like he was ready to actually work on our marriage. He went to Texas for about 3 weeks. Early into his trip to Texas, he would send me texts saying that he was glad to be free of me, that I was controlling and suffocating. At the end, his tone changed. The forgetfulness of his ring started right before this. In the week before he left, he was asking me odd questions, like, so should I start dating while I'm out there? I told him that until he got that final piece of paper in the mail we were still married, and that I would not be dating. When he got back, the first couple weeks were much better. I could tell he was trying. But within the first week I found texts on his phone from another high school female friend, a model who was in the town he had considered moving to and was looking for roommates. He told her that he was separated, but it was a good separation and that he and the ex, me, were still on good terms. When I mentioned this, he swore that he had misunderstood the difference between separated and divorced and thought we were truly divorced. I asked him not to text her again. He said okay. About a week after this, he put a lock on his phone and refuses to tell me the password. While he was in school, he seemed to only make female friends. He would tell me about his day and his new friends and how they all were surprised he was married at 24 and told him how good-looking he is and how lucky I am. He'd complained before that he didn't have a lot of friends because of moving to California so suddenly, so I let it slide and told him I was happy. I call him handsome all the time, but hey, it's nice to get outside affirmation every once in a while, that the rest of the world still finds you attractive, I guess. Now he's been out every day this last week, until late, 10 or beyond. He's going with a male friend of mine from work. I confronted him on Wednesday about it. I told him that I was so happy he had friends and was enjoying himself, but that I felt really neglected. I asked that he try to only hang out with his friends 2 or 3 days a week, starting that day, and that when he did, he come home before 10 on weeknights, as I go to bed at 10 for work. He went out that night anyway, and every other night so far. Last night he was out until 3 in the morning. When I tried to be firm on Wednesday, he said no, that can start next week, and told me again I was being controlling. We started MC last week, and he told our counselor he found me asking him when he would be home to be controlling. I tried to explain that I just want a ballpark time, around 10, before 1, and that as his wife I do deserve to know. He disagrees. Every time I touch on the fact that I wonder if he's cheating, he will say something to the effect of I won't live a life being wrongfully accused, or I have done nothing wrong, or I'm tired of feeling like a bad person because of your accusations. He will usually also threaten divorce because I don't trust him and he doesn't want to play stupid games with me. He swears up and down he isn't cheating and would never cheat. So, that's my story. I have no solid proof of infidelity, and I feel like I must be going crazy to suspect anything. I know in the past my actions may have driven him away, but ever since he got back, I believe I've shown my willingness to repent, change, and try to be a better spouse. I have nothing to go on, no evidence of any transgressions. I don't want to snoop or try to hack his accounts, because I feel like that'll make things worse. And what if I find nothing and he's really just being a stupid man? I'm really torn right now. I feel like I can't sleep, I can't concentrate at work, I dread coming home. I'm not eating as much, but then again, there are times where I will binge on unhealthy foods. I'm considering IC again. I'm a mess. Went to MC again. He claims that he's listening, and that he likes this counselor. He didn't like the last one, but to be fair, I didn't really like the last one either. I felt like the last one wanted to rush us through our allotted 8 weeks and be done. I try to gently bring up a conversation each time about the session, something like, well, how did you feel about that? What did you think? He doesn't really respond. Counselor pointed out that I may still need some work on my more controlling tendencies, which I'm trying. I need to be met halfway though, and I communicated this. For example, I stated that for me, if I ask when he'll be home I want a ballpark time plus divided by 30 minutes. Counselor said that might be a bit too tight of a ballpark. But for me, I'm a very exact person. If I tell you I'll be home in 7 minutes, I'll pull in the drive at exactly 7 minutes, so that is conceding a lot. Our homework was to write each other a love letter. He didn't do it. Well, he claimed to have started the letter that afternoon, but I've never seen it. Next session is 2.5 weeks from now. Counselor is out of town until then. Went out with the guys again to a bar, promised he'd be home by 11. Then his phone died and he apparently couldn't come home to charge it. I left for work at 6 this morning, no sign of him. Of course, I have at least 4 texts claiming he's sorry and he loves me and it was an accident. I like the privacy versus secrecy distinction. I'll bring that up at some point. My main issue right now is he's taking everything I say as just me being crazy and overly controlling, and insinuating that these are things only I think, and aren't necessarily going to be true for everybody, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm as transparent as I can be. I let him know my comings and goings, who I'm with and where. He's tried to mention a couple times that I ask things of him that I don't do in return, but if I don't know about it, how can I do better? A part of me wants to have an intervention of sorts with my other married friends and show him that what I'm asking for isn't unreasonable, but I think that might make things worse. For now, I think I'll just lay low. Like I said, the car is with me 99% of the time, so no need for a VAR yet, and I have access to his phone. I need to check his emails. He's let me know that he wouldn't be dumb enough to leave texts out for me or Facebook messages, and since he knows I'm serious about my suspicions, I'm sure he's getting more careful. Thank you, weightlifter, for pointing out words with friends. I know about the texting on there but hadn't even thought of it as a tool. Weeks later. Well, now we start the long and slow road to R. He will be calling counseling today. I guess he spoke with a hotline last week but will be making an appointment as well. He will move into a place in 2 weeks. Originally it was longer, but I let him know that was unacceptable, and he agreed to my new terms. The reason I gave was that I couldn't inconvenience my friends forever, but really, I would rather avoid us getting into a holding pattern where he's comfortable. Right now, he has our house, with food in it and our dogs and internet and TV. I'm the one that has had to make uncomfortable changes so far. No more. I'm still at my friend's house, and she has told me I can stay as long as needed. Of course, he doesn't know this. I think it was pretty powerful for him yesterday to have me look dead in his eyes and say, if you do not follow through, I will leave you. No emotion, no tears, just straight telling him that. I feel bad. I saw him yesterday and we spent a little while together, but I didn't feel anything. We held hands, he kissed me, he said I love you, but I didn't really feel anything. I'm a little worried about what that means, but I know that will take some time for me to figure out. Yesterday was bad. He was fine in the morning, but for some reason in the afternoon he exploded at me. I think he may have been drinking. He suddenly was pissed off that I'm staying with a friend and have the car and abandoned him. He has no income right now, but the house was fully stocked with food when I left, and I got him some more to supplement last week as well. When I pointed out that him yelling at me was not acceptable, then he was sad because of the miscarriage and the loss of his niece within the last 2 years, both things I've asked him about multiple times and he said over and over didn't affect him. I got angry when he implied, I don't understand the pain of losing a child. Jerk, you didn't have contractions so bad you were puking. You weren't alone and positive you were dying because it hurt so bad, and maybe dying wouldn't hurt that much. You didn't have to physically go through the aftermath and the nasty stuff the doctor forgot to mention about miscarrying. You didn't relive that pain every night when you fell asleep. I understand where he is probably better than he does. A year later, divorce was filed early January. I filed for default 2 weeks ago. Fingers crossed that by June I'll be single. STBX doesn't live with me or anywhere near me and has admitted that he has already started dating himself. Swears that he hasn't done anything physical, but after finding out the man was monitoring my online accounts, I don't trust him very much. I actually have a somewhat date lined up next week with a guy I've been chatting with online. I haven't dated since my husband, obviously, so it's been a few years. And I was obviously a couple years younger and more, shall we say, promiscuous. I didn't do dating very well. I was the kind of girl who would sleep with people on the first date. I'd rather not be that way this time. How does this work? Do you hold hands on the first date? Do you greet the guy with a hug? How does a girl in her mid-20s handle a first date? My comment, you guys got any advice for OP number 2 and what you think about her relationship with her husband? Comment down, subscribe, and I got a slightly longer story coming in a few hours.